Here are the top stories for today, May 27, 2021. Very diligent, President Rodrigo Duterte lauds the government's tireless efforts as over 99% of aid for NCR Plus beneficiaries have been disbursed. No reason to relax yet. The OCTA research group wants the NCR Plus to stay under GCQ with heightened restrictions for another 2 weeks despite a dip in the average daily COVID-19 cases. A new beginning on the way, 61 beneficiaries of the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program undergo swab test as part of the dispatch procedure before being sent home to Leyte. And the Labor Department says the deployment of OFWs to Israel remains suspended despite the truce that put a halt to the exchange of fire between Israeli forces and the Hamas militant group. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Our top story for today, President Rodrigo Duterte lauds the efforts of the Department of Interior and Local Government in the speedy distribution of financial assistance. The details from Joyce Cudis.
President Rodrigo Duterte said the government is very diligent in distributing emergency subsidies to Filipinos to help them cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. This after Interior Secretary Eduardo Anyo informed him that almost 23 million or 99.67% of financial assistance have already been distributed to qualified beneficiaries. He said around 93 local government units have already finished the aid distribution.
The ILG has been very diligent in giving the money. Sila ang inahango na sila ang magbigay. Na nakikita naman ninyo. I said pay attention to the figures because then you would know magkano ang binibigay ng gobyerno na ayuda para sa Pilipino na naghihirap. Thank you.
Meanwhile, President Duterte said it is unacceptable for Filipinos to demand to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. He said if some preferred one vaccine brand over the other, more Filipinos might follow suit and there will not be enough of the brand for the entire population.
Huwag kayong mamili ng bakuna. They are all good.
The president also said the arrest of protocol violators is now mandatory as more Filipinos continue to defy the strict quarantine and health rules. This after 2 people who were present at the Ciudad sa Gov't resort tested positive for COVID-19, while 54 others got infected after attending a pool party in Nagaisang Nayon in Quezon City. The government is also tracing those who were at the Bacas River in Norzagaray, Bulacan.
You are not contributing to the lowering of the COVID-19 cases, but rather you are there to transmit, be getting positive and transmit it to your pag-uwi ninyo, sa nanay ninyo, tatay ninyo, kapatid. Walang katapusan ang tradisyon dito. Wala tayong pera forever na magsabi sa inyo na sige, mag-COVID kayong lahat. Talagang ang unang ipakulong ko, yung barangay captain. Having committed the crime of the reduction of duty under the revised penal code, napipilitan ako, ayoko, sabi ko, magtrabaho kayo.
For the PNA Newsroom, I am Joyce Cudis.
More than 1 million doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines will be administered as first dose in June. The country has so far received more than 2.5 million doses of AstraZeneca through the COVAX facility.
Natanggap natin ay 2 million doses ng AstraZeneca. To date, we have already given 1 million doses administered, no? Out of the 2 million. And kailangan na lang natin 500 million, about 500,000 for the first dose. 497,000 na lang ang kailangan nating maiturok as first dose by of June. So we are confident by end of June na i-job na itong ating remaining 500 as first doses habang kinokompleto natin yung pang second dose ng first batch.
Meanwhile, almost 4.5 million Filipinos have been vaccinated at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Among those who have been fully vaccinated are health service frontliners, senior citizens, individuals with comorbidities, and essential workers.
Tinatansyang first week of June na simulan natin yung A4. But kung matatandaan mo, Yusek Rocky, meron tayong symbolic noon May 1st for our OFWs and our labor force who belong to the A4. So, pero ito ay gagawin lang po natin sa tinatawag nating NCR Plus 8. So, buong NCR, tapos yung Bulacan, Pampanga, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, Cebu, and Davao lang muna.
The U.S. Agency for International Development is helping Davao City intensify its COVID-19 response. And the Department of Health plans to hire more nurses for hospitals in Negros Oriental. More on these and other news from the provinces from Chris Crismundo.
In Davao City, the local government has received assistance from the United States Agency for International Development or USAID. This include 2 mobile swabbing teams for this city, complete with logistics and testing kits. The USAID also provided 6 personnel for the swabbing team. The 2 mobile swabbing teams will cater to those who cannot access the Santa Ana Swabbing Center. In Abra, the ongoing aggressive community testing in the province has posted a 1.7% positivity rate. The aggressive community testing that runs until May 28 is being conducted by the National Task Force Against COVID-19 through the Basis Conversion and Development Authority. There are currently 109 active COVID-19 cases and 21 deaths in the province. In Negros Oriental, the Department of Health will hire nurses to augment the current workforce in their private hospitals. This as the province noted an increase in the number of COVID-19 infections. The DOH will announce the temporary hiring of nurses for at least 3 months. DOH Negros Oriental Provincial Chief Dr. Socrates Villamor said the largest private hospitals in the province have responded to the request of the government for additional bed capacities for COVID-19 patients. In San Juan, La Union, tourist arrivals are now limited to 700 guests per day. Mayor Arturo Valdriz said the entry of non-resident tourists will be on a first-come, first-served basis. Tourists from Luzon will be allowed entry provided they present a negative RT-PCR test 3 days before their arrival. However, tourists from the National Capital Region, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal are not allowed. The provincial government urged tourists to book their stay through the DOT-accredited La Union-based travel and tour operator through the Tarana Visita system. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
The OCTA Research Group recommends 2 more weeks of GCQ or General Community Quarantine in the National Capital Region and its neighboring provinces. OCTA Research Group fellow Professor Guido David said that despite a decline in the average of new COVID-19 cases in the country, a high number was recorded in NCR, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal. In its latest monitoring report, the NCR's average COVID-19 cases per day is 1,099. The NCR's positivity rate also decreased to 10% from 25% in April. Meanwhile, its reproduction number has dropped to 0.53%. Distressed overseas Filipino workers who lost their jobs and want to return to their homeland will be repatriated. This assurance is given by President Rodrigo Duterte, saying it pained him to see them suffer from the impact of the pandemic.
Masakit sa akin yung mga Pilipino na mag-uwi dahil nga sa pandemic. Masakit sa akin na mawalaan sila ng trabaho at medyo ubos ang pera. A long way to come home. So kung sino talaga yung mga Pilipino na gustong umuwi, we will do everything to expedite the return to the country, which is the Philippines. Mahal ko kayo.
Meanwhile, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III said President Rodrigo Duterte approved the release of an additional 5.2 billion pesos for the repatriation and quarantine expenses of returning OFWs. This as the budget for hotel, transportation, and food expenses of returning OFWs could run out this May. Thousands of other OFWs are currently staying in various isolation facilities following their repatriation. Turkish diplomat and President of the United Nations General Assembly Volkan Bozkır has called on the international community to ensure a fair and equitable distribution of coronavirus vaccines across the world. During his visit to Bangladesh, Bozkır reiterates that no one is safe until all are safe. He said vaccines are the solution to this crisis. As such, these must be distributed to all countries immediately. Referring to the pandemic situation in his country, Bozkır promised to work on all platforms, including the UN, to ensure that people all over the world can be inoculated without any discrimination. Meanwhile, over 4.1 million COVID-19 cases and more than 84,000 deaths were recorded worldwide last week. The World Health Organization, or WHO, says the coronavirus incidence has dropped by 14% and the mortality rate by 2% compared to the previous days. Let's now take a look at the COVID-19 figures around the world. Still to come, 61 beneficiaries of the BP2 program are one step closer to starting a new life in Leyte. And the lower chamber passes economic amendments to the Constitution on second reading. Details ahead, this is the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
If you are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective. I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic, because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. A new hope awaits those who want to return to their provinces and start anew. This as 61 beneficiaries of the government's Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa or BP2 program are set to be sent home to Leyte. The beneficiaries underwent the usual dispatch procedure where they were swabbed and tested and have completed a 14-day quarantine. They were also provided with food and lodging at the BP2 depot in Quezon City while waiting for their swab test results. Returnees who tested negative for COVID-19 will depart in 2 batches on Friday morning, where they will be taken to the Ninoy Aquino International Airport for their flight to Leyte. Those who tested positive will undergo a triage procedure where those asymptomatic and have mild symptoms will be taken to quarantine facilities, while those symptomatic and have severe symptoms will be taken to an assigned hospital. Created under Executive Order 114 last year, the BP2 aims to provide hope for a better future to Filipinos through equity and resources throughout the country aimed at boosting countryside development. It also aims to decongest Metro Manila's urban areas by encouraging people to return to their home provinces and assist them with various forms of support and other incentives. Overseas Filipino workers who have been inoculated with China's Sinovac COVID-19 jabs are allowed to enter Saudi Arabia. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III said OFWs who have been vaccinated will still undergo quarantines once they arrive in the host country. This came in the wake of social media posts claiming that Riyadh will not allow entry of travelers inoculated with China-made vaccines such as Sinopharm and Sinovac. In a Laging Handa briefing, Health Undersecretary Mirna Cabotaje said the government is aware that some countries prefer Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine over other brands to be administered to OFWs who plan to be employed in their nation. Cabotaje cited the need for talks to identify the specific requirements, including COVID-19 vaccine brands preferred by countries where OFWs are employed. Meanwhile, the deployment of Filipino workers to Israel remains suspended despite the ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian militant group Hamas last week. Bello, however, clarified that there is no ban as they are continuously monitoring the situation in the host country. Gaza is currently placed under Alert Level 2, which means there is an automatic suspension of deployment of OFWs. Bello also appealed for understanding of the 400 Filipinos who are supposed to leave for Israel this month who were affected by the deployment suspension. Public utility vehicle drivers have received over 461 million pesos from the Service Contracting Program, or SCP, of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB. In a Facebook post, the LTFRB said the amount includes the 4,000 peso initial payout to all drivers who join the program, their weekly payout, and their on-time incentive. Over 12,000 drivers have received their initial payout and nearly 3,000 drivers have received their 25,000 peso onboarding incentive. In addition, drivers under the program may receive an additional 7,000 pesos if they log in with the system's app for 5 days in a week. Drivers or operators may join the SCP by visiting www.servicecontracting.ph or by visiting the LTFRB social media and website for information. The House of Representatives has approved on second reading the proposal to amend the restrictive economic provisions in the 1987 Constitution. The Chamber passed resolution of both Houses number 2, which proposes economic amendments to open up the Philippines to direct investments. The proposal, principally authored by Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, seeks to insert the phrase "unless otherwise provided by law" to several sections of the Constitution that restrict foreign ownership of public utilities, educational institutions, media, and advertising companies. The amendments would eliminate overly protective provisions to attract more foreign investments and to adopt policies to enable the country to compete more effectively in the global economy. Meanwhile, two House panels approved a measure authorizing the Department of Agriculture to use the excess rice tariff revenues under the rice tariffication law for direct cash assistance to farmers. The House Committee on Agriculture and Food and the Committee on Appropriations approved House Bill 8964, or the proposed Cash Assistance for Filipino Farmers Act. Appropriations Committee Chair Eric Go Yap emphasized the urgency of intervening for farmers in light of the current state of palay prices and the crippling effects of the pandemic. The Bureau of Customs said it has collected 14.6 billion pesos in revenues from January to November 2020 from the 2.25 million metric tons of rice imports during the 11th month period. Up next, earning while saving the environment, we tell you how Quezon City will make this possible for its residents, and the Department of Tourism has some tasty aid for the promotions of Samar's culinary attractions. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Quezon City residents welcome the city's Trash to Cashback Point System program on waste management, saying this will help save the environment while cushioning the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The program, which was launched in March, is part of the city's campaign to reduce plastic waste. The first step is on the barangay level, where residents may bring their recyclables like metal, papers, PET bottles, and single-use plastics. Residents can trade these materials to environmental points, which can be exchanged for basic goods such as rice, eggs, vegetables, and other essential grocery items. They can also be donated to chosen beneficiaries who will then receive groceries or incentive bags from program partner Basic Environmental Systems and Technologies, or BEST. Mayor Joy Belmonte said the program is set to be rolled out in different communities in Quezon City next month. Sectoral representatives in Eastern Visayas have pledged to help wipe out insurgency in the region through active participation in peace and development efforts. The representatives from indigenous peoples, women, youth, and others signed the Eastern Visayas Peace and Development Manifesto in a conference at the M. Grand Convention Center in Catbalogan City, Samar on Tuesday. The signing is one of the initiatives of the Eastern Visayas Regional Task Force on Ending Local Communist Armed Conflict. The conference listed down issues and concerns to help end the influence of the New People's Army in Region 8. DILG Eastern Visayas Regional Director Darwin Bibar said the output of the said event will serve as a reference for the social reform agenda of the basic sectors, which will be presented during the National Multi-Sectoral Peace and Development Assembly with President Duterte in June. Dinyoso said the manifestation of support and consultation is a plus factor in the government's drive to eliminate the New People's Army. In sports, the Bases Conversion and Development Authority assured the safety of over 600 players, coaches, and tournament staff during the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers to be held in Clark next month. The movement of participants will be limited to within the airport, hotels, and the Angeles University Foundation Sports and Cultural Center, where the tournament will be held. The foreign delegates are required to take RT-PCR test 12 days, 7 days, and 2 days before departure for the Philippines. They must also secure tests on the day of arrival, 4 days afterwards, and before departure if at all required. SBP President Al Panlilio earlier said the bubble environment for FIBA will be set up almost the same way as the one done in Clark last year for the PBA 2020 Philippine Cup. Teams will play their window matches in a bid to gain a slot in the tournament proper, which will be held in Jakarta, Indonesia from August 16 to August 28. The Department of Tourism has extended 3 million pesos in assistance to Samar Province to enhance its culinary attractions dubbed Secret Kitchens of Samar. The Secret Kitchens of Samar is a campaign of the provincial government under the Spark Samar Tourism Drive, which features the province's culinary heritage. Its most popular product is tamalos, a variation of the tamale, a dish of Mexican origin. It has chunks of pork belly flavored by pipian or sweet and spicy peanut sauce that is neatly wrapped in dough made of rice flour and steamed on a bed of banana leaves. The initiative is one of the strategies of the central government to attain the industry's recovery amid the pandemic. The project, that will run from June to December this year, seeks to capacitate tour guides, kitchen staff, food frontliners, and pasalubong center, produce promotional materials, and develop social media content. And here's another look at today's biggest stories. Very diligent, President Rodrigo Duterte lauds the government's tireless efforts as over 99% of aid for NCR Plus beneficiaries have been disbursed. No reason to relax yet. The OCTA research group wants the NCR Plus to stay under GCQ with heightened restrictions for another 2 weeks despite a dip in the average daily COVID-19 cases. A new beginning on the way, 61 beneficiaries of the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program undergo swab test as part of the dispatch procedure before being sent home to Leyte. And the Labor Department says the deployment of OFWs to Israel remains suspended despite the truce that put a halt to the exchange of fire between Israeli forces and the Hamas militant group. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day and stay safe, everyone.